Davis Mills is the starter again for this Houston Texan offense. What does that mean ahead of Sunday's matchup versus the Dallas Cowboys?
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You know, when Davis was a starter, I mean, sometimes you need the relief pitcher to come in, and that's what it was. Sometimes you bring the relief pitcher in, and he's doing well, you stay that course. But if it's not the case, so Davis will start for us this week, and we expect the 2 weeks of watching from the sideline to help. And there are so many other things that we can do to help the quarterback position. It's a lot more than just it.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Friday episode of the Locked On Texan podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm John Hickman. This is Cody Davis. Heading into the weekend, want to let you guys know that we will have a Saturday show to make up for not posting on Tuesday. So the weekend show is going to be lit. We'll have a guest on that. Wait till y'all see who this guest is. However, Sunday's matchup will not feature Kyle Allen as the starting quarterback, as you guys already know. We're kind of late to the party talking about this. Davis Mills will be the starter, presumably for the next 5 games to end out the year. That was Lovie Smith talking about, basically Kyle Allen playing the relief pitcher role for this offense. In the 2 games, Kyle Allen was the starter. The Houston Texans put up 29 points, 15 in the second half versus the starter-less Miami Dolphins, and an offense that failed to score on a couple of red zone trips against the Cleveland Browns. Cody, you are around this team each and every day. You're seeing them stretch. You're seeing them go through a warm-up. You're behind the scenes, hearing certain things. But I think overall, my question to you is, and I think a lot of the, viewers and listeners of the show, the question is, did it make sense to ever pull Davis Mills in the first place?
Yes and no. And you got to look at this from 2 different ways. One, it made sense for the Houston Texans to pull Davis Mills because, as we've been talking about a lot ever since week 1 of the regular season, Davis Mills has regressed from last season. And, the one thing that I would give this organization, especially Lovie Smith and Nick Caserio, was the fact that they were 100% behind of giving Davis Mills an opportunity to prove that he can be the starting quarterback for not just for 2022, but beyond, whether that be for the next 2 years, next 3 years, or possibly the next franchise quarterback. But as we all know, Davis Mills has failed in that aspect. When you go back and you take a look at every single one of the Houston Texans game, probably more so after the loss against the Tennessee Titans, Lovie Smith has shown his frustration and his disappointment in the play of the quarterback room.
Right.
And to make matters even worse, the one thing that bugs Lovie Smith, and it makes sense because he's an NFL head coach, is the fact that his quarterback was turning the ball over. I mean, this is a guy, Davis Mills, over his last 5 starts, he has thrown at least 1 interception. And the thought process was, because of the inabilities of the quarterback and because there were several games where the Texans did not look competitive, they didn't even look like a real NFL offensive team. They wanted to see if Kyle Allen could give this team a jump start. And that jump start failed. You look at Kyle Allen's numbers in 2 games, 416 yards, 2 touchdowns with 4 interceptions. We talked about it on Monday's show. Lovie Smith was very frustrated about Kyle Allen's inability to protect the football. Yeah. Now, with 5 games left, the thinking for this organization is, okay, Davis Mills had an opportunity to watch from the sideline, to study the game from the sideline over the last 2 weeks, and now they believe that they can get that jump start that they wanted and was hoping to get out of Kyle Allen, that they can possibly get that out of Davis Mills. But at the end of the day, they are hoping that the amount of time that Davis Mills spent on the sideline would actually improve his play. Lovie Smith also had this to say during his media availability.
Well, as far as things you work on, to me, when you're in that role, you're going to do a lot of observing. It's what you're going to do as much as anything. It's going through all of the drills like all of our quarterbacks do. But it's just looking at it from a different perspective, situation from the sideline. Normally observing can help instead of you being the guy that's always kind of under the gun a little bit. I know how he handled it. He was a pro about it. He switched roles with Kyle and did whatever he could to help as a backup quarterback. And I know he's excited about another opportunity.
I'm not going to lie to you, John, listeners and viewers. I do like that way of thinking, pulling Davis Mills and giving him an opportunity to learn from afar. But at the same time, I don't think 2 weeks is enough. I mean, and for Lovie Smith to, use the example of what he did last year when they put him in as this team starting quarterback over the last 5 games. Once again, want to give you guys his numbers. Last 5 games of last season, Davis Mills recorded 1,258 yards, 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, while completing nearly 70% of his passes. It's a little bit of a similar situation this year, but because it seems like there's a little bit more uncertainty surrounding this organization, and we're going to get into that later on in the show. I don't think Davis Mills is going to have an opportunity to replicate the success he had last year.
Yeah, man. And then we look at the quarterback situation as, for one, I thought it was funny that you're making it known Davis Mills will be the starter for this upcoming game compared to not making it known that Kyle Allen was going to be the starter.
So I guess they gave the Cowboys a competitive advantage.
Right. heading into the week against the Miami Dolphins. And I don't think it necessarily does anything particular in terms of how the Dallas Cowboys will prepare for this game. I mean, listen, this is a team that is the number 1 turnover team. Number 2, actually, when turnovers differential. Number 1 in terms of getting after the quarterback. They got 48 sacks on the year. Then they're the number 5 overall defense with yards allowed, 309 yards a game. Yeah, so what the Dallas Cowboys do very good, the Houston Texans ain't gonna combat that. But I thought that maybe if you're gonna give your young quarterback an opportunity to really learn from the sidelines like he was the past couple of games, this was another opportunity where you can give Davis Mills a week off from being a starter, right? Because they're going up against a tenacious defense.
I say best in the league, and I hate to say that because I you know what, that's another story for another day.
Well, I mean, listen, the top 5 right now, the top 5 right now, you got to look at San Fran, Philly, the Denver Broncos defense was balling, even though their offense stinks. Even the New York Jets in terms of yards allowed, but top 2 in sacks. Number 1 in sacks, right? Number
Michael
2
Parsons got 12 or 13 by himself.
Yeah, Lawrence looks like he is excited to play football this year. But what I'm getting at is this was another week, an opportunity for you to give Davis Mills an opportunity to learn from the sideline if that is in fact what the plan was. But overall, man, it's good to see Mills out there. I read somewhere where he said that his mom and his girlfriend and his family really, kept his spirits high while he was out there on the sidelines. What you want to see from Mills this week, because we got to talk about what the possible 2-week vacation did for him, right? What you want to see from Mills this week and moving forward to close out this year, guys, is just kind of replicating the accuracy from last year's 5 games when he played for the Houston Texans, right? Because I think in large part, that was a big reason why that they gave him the opportunity to win the quote-unquote franchise quarterback role this year because of some of the accurate throws he was making last year to close out the year. That has been absent this year. So starting with the Dallas Cowboys, and again, that is a rough start. You want to see him kind of replicate the accuracy. You want to see him replicate the accuracy down the field, right? I remember Davis Mills being a top down the field quarterback last year. That's been absent this year. So you want to see him kind of get back into that role and make things a little bit more competitive for himself. When next year's draft rolls around, maybe they're not so quick to move on from him. I wish they still should be, but
Come
maybe
on
in
now.
5 games
Come on now.
he'll go against that.
Come on now.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp Therapy Online. Unfortunately, guys, life doesn't come with a user manual. So when it's not working out for you, it's normal to feel stuck. Therapists are trained to help you figure out the cause of challenging emotions and learn productive coping skills, which makes therapy the closest thing to a guided tour of the complex engine called you. BetterHelp has connected over 3 million people with licensed therapists. It's convenient, it's secure, and most importantly, it's accessible anywhere and 100% online. Everyone deserves to feel their best, and with BetterHelp, they make it the easiest way to get started. Right, as the world's largest therapy service, they've matched millions of people with professional licensed therapists, and are always available online 100%. All the benefits of in-person therapy, plus it's more convenient and more accessible and more affordable. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to match with a therapist, and if things aren't clicking, you can easily switch to a new therapist anytime. It really couldn't be simpler, right? So get unstuck with BetterHelp. Learn more and save 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/locked on. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/locked on. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers out there. It is Friday, so the weekend is upon us. For my educator friends out there, we only got 2 weeks left, and we can enjoy the Christmas break. But for my journalists and sports broadcasters out there, the grind don't stop each and every day, each and every way. And so sometimes when you think about the grind, especially when you look at the team you cover like we do with the Houston Texans, your team every day, sometimes your team is in a bad spot and you go down the rabbit hole of trying to figure out what happened. When did this happen? How could this happen? During the process and during the road of getting to where the Houston Texans are right now at 110-1, you ask yourself, what was one of the mistakes, right? And shout out to my boy Free Agent Aaron on Twitter, man. This was a conversation that, he sparked. I saw it early this morning. I said, I feel like we got to talk about it, right? And Aaron is one of my favorite follows on social media.
Mine too, man. Shout out, man. That's my boy.
Shout out to Free Agent Aaron. But one of the conversations that he brought up was the press conference early in the year where Nick Caserio introduced Lovie Smith, and Cal McNair had an opening statement. And that opening statement said, the goal is to build a program that can compete for championships and sustain long-term success. I believe in Nick Caserio and the vision he has for our football team. I've never seen a more thorough and in-depth process than what Nick just went through with our coaching search. Our entire organization is in a much better place this year than what it was last year. In large part of that is due to Nick Caserio, but all of the progress and work behind the scene needs to start showing up. Cody, do you have any takeaways from that?
Yes, that whole entire quote did not age well at all. That is my only takeaway.
You know what? So those words, thorough, in-depth, process. I look at what he said then, and I've looked at some of the changes Cal McNair has now started to either sign off on or directly do it himself, right? Number one comes to mind, getting Jack to be out the paint. Number two, the jersey swap. Some of the cool things that he did with the fans in the offseason. But thorough and in-depth process always seemed to come off as for me, it came off as clueless then. And what I'm saying now is Cal McNair, right, should be in the film room himself. He's a rich guy. He has a lot of money. He has the type of money that you can buy somebody that would privately tutor you on things that you want to be more knowledgeable about. And one of the things that he needs to be more knowledgeable about is going through a proper coaching search and actively being involved. Because we look at the first coaching search with David Culley. Not sure how involved Cal McNair was at the time mentally with everything that he had going on behind the scenes. Look at year 2. Now you're entrusting somebody in Nick Caserio, and you believe that he got it right. Which, by the way, some of the candidates, just to remind you guys, Gannon from the Phillies, from Philadelphia Eagles, Kevin O'Connell, right? They missed out on him, and he's doing a phenomenal job as a head coach for the Vikings, right? Brian Flores. I don't think Brian Flores is going to be a head coach in the NFL ever again due to the lawsuit that he put out there. But in this quote, it ends off with, but all the progress and work behind the scene needs to start showing up. I also want to link that to Lovie Smith saying early in the week, he never has a fear about losing his job. Also heard that around this same time last year from who?
David Culley.
David Culley. However, I think that this time, like I mentioned, for Cal McNair to get tutored on what needs to go on with a successful hiring of a head coach, that also needs to start happening and being considered for a general manager. Right? If you believed then in the thorough and in-depth process that Nick Caserio went through for your head coaching search, and this team is well off, well, not well off, but not as a competitive team in terms of wins or losses as they were last year, then now, Cal, my call to action is go ahead and get a thorough and in-depth process on everything. Because if that was a thorough and in-depth process looking for a head coach, then you know what? Maybe everything needs to start tearing down once again. And this time have more knowledgeable guys around you that you can actually trust while you're actually trusting yourself. Don't just allow everything to operate and work around you. You got to actually work with it, Cal. Your hands got to get dirty a little bit, a lot of it actually, to work against some of the things in the past couple of seasons and then make this franchise a whole hell of a lot more successful. Now, with that being said, I was never big on the Nick Caserio hiring simply because I feel like the Houston Texans need to go their own separate way to build their own identity completely away from the New England Patriots. And that's been an issue of this franchise since they were born 20 years ago. But I will say this. When I look at Nick Caserio, no cap space coming in, no draft capital coming in. Next year, he has another good year in terms of draft capital. But this year coming up, he also will have some good money to play around with. Why it's very important for Cal McNair to get it right in terms of your head coach, because if Lovie Smith is your head coach for next year, who, by the way, has already mentioned that he doesn't believe he's going to be fired, he's not worried about his job, can you bank on players wanting to come to Houston to play for Lovie Smith, who in his prime was a great coach, but the product that's been on the field, and you still got to combat a lot of the off-the-field issues and internal issues that has been leaked around the league. Can you trust for your head coach, Lovie Smith, to be the face of your franchise, along with Nick Caserio, to bring in players in free agency? That's a question that either you thoroughly believe in, Cal McNair, or if you have questions about it. You have questions about it. If you do have questions about it, then again, it's time to really go ahead and spring clean now. So when the time spring comes around, your house is in order. Ladies and gentlemen, Thursday Night Football was last night. I've been telling y'all all week. I tell y'all all the time, Prize Picks, man. Prize Picks. Christmas is coming up. And if you're feeling a little itchy, you want to make a little extra money, you could do that with Prize Picks. You know why? It's safe and it's fast. What is Prize Picks? Y'all already know, but I'm going to tell y'all again. You can pick 2 to 5 players. And if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projections, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. You're not competing against other people, right? It's not me versus Cody. It's not me versus my man X Fraser. It's not me versus my man Jalen Johnson, who's always in the comments. No, it's me versus the projections available. And Prize Picks offers projections on any sport you watch. NFL, of course, NBA. Guys, did y'all know soccer, WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis, NBA, boxing, golf, Euro, basketball, cricket, and more? Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy and currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Download the PrizePick app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy football or sports rather today. First-time users can receive a 100% deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. Again, download the PrizePicks app today or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports right now. Thank you for making the Locked On Texans your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. The biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, I mean, I hope we get similar results to last year. Felt like last year when I was able to come back for the second time, played really well at the end of the season. So these past 2 weeks really just allowed me to sit back and continue to learn. Early on in the season, and as the season progresses, kind of a whirlwind of everything as you play a game, watch the film immediately after the game, and then you're quickly on to the next opponent. So there's not a time to really sit there and evaluate what you're doing. You're just trying to continue to progress as the season goes. But these last 2 weeks really allowed me to sit back and kind of start piecing some more things together in my mind of what it takes to be successful out there, and hopefully we can fall back to those fundamentals that I've been doing my whole life, and as Pep's taught me since I've been here in Houston, to go out there and play successful football.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this Friday installment of Locked On Texans. And as we opened up the show with Davis Mills, of course, the starting quarterback for the Houston Texans, going into the Week 14 match against the Dallas Cowboys, who are playing phenomenal football, by the way, even though I hate to say it. Every time I mention the name, the words Dallas Cowboys and good football, my stomach start hurting, but that's another story for another day. But with everything that's being considered, John, as we talked about on early on in the show, man, I don't expect Davis Mills to go out there and replicate the same success he had last year. And unfortunately, majority of it is not really his fault, because when you take a look at what he's going to be playing with inside AT&T Stadium on Sunday, he's not going to have Brandon Cooks, who I do believe is done for the season with this mystery calf injury. Nico Collins is very questionable for this game due to a foot injury, and you're looking at his top 2 targets and by far the top 2 receivers that's not going to be out there on the field. And of course, you got guys like Philip Dorsett, you got guys like Chris Moore, you have guys like what's my boy name, Johnny Johnson III, who still hasn't got an opportunity to get called up.
Amari Rogers, signed to the, he played in the last game, didn't get a target, but it's about time for him to get on that field.
You know what? I apologize for looking at you like that. Even though he have subpar talent, it's not going to be enough to improve this Houston Texans offense. And if this Houston Texans offense does not look better, then that also means that Davis Mills isn't going to look better either.
Yeah, by the way, John Grenard practiced this week. He is expected to play. Derek Stingley will miss another game, and Rex Burkhead is also expected to miss another game. Is that correct? And he's on that concussion protocol. I think at this point of his career, him playing on Sunday does absolutely nothing for any party. But you are 100% right, man. It's just this was an issue that I had with this team early in the year. I felt like they failed to capitalize on the waiver wire in preseason. They failed to really bring in depth because they were already not as talented as you would like your franchise to be. That for a franchise that wanted their second-year quarterback to take a next step, they didn't put pieces around him for him to take that step, honestly, like we've seen other franchises do for their young quarterbacks. And then on top of that, they didn't have the depth to back it up. So another reason why I wanted to see Davis Mills kind of wait another week before playing football again. Cody and I, we both talked about that. We didn't believe that this was the last time we was going to see Davis Mills after he got benched. 2 weeks later, he's back in the starting role. He doesn't have enough, man. This franchise does not have enough to compete with the rest of the league, and it is what it is. I am happy to see John Grenard back, though. He's a player that 8 sacks last year. I want to say 1.5 sacks right now at the top of my mind. He's been hurt, dealing with that calf injury, and he has been a complete mystery for the Houston Texans this year. And I'm serious because I think a lot of people thought that he would take that leap this year, and he has not. And now he has played himself into, questioning whether or not he can be used as a piece to get more draft picks back for this upcoming draft or not for the Houston Texans. Really quick, though, DJ Bieniemy, ESPN reporter, he tweeted, "Where did the narrative come from that Nick Caserio didn't hire the Texans' 2 head coaches?" Yeah. I'm going to leave that to you guys, whether or not you believe the Texans, the Nick Caserio did not hire or did hire the last 2 head coaches. But it's going to be a rough game on Sunday, man. And this is one of those Sundays where,
gosh,
as a sports journalist, as a sports reporter, as a sports broadcaster, you just can't wait for it to be over.
yeah,
You kind of want to watch the highlights after the game and just enjoy your Sunday.
yeah, man, and unfortunately, because I have to cover the Rockets versus Bucks game, I decided to pass on the opportunity to go down there to Jerry World. So, I'm gonna have to be sitting at home covering this game from my TV. I hope I don't doze off to sleep. But John, really quick, I do want to mention this. You talked a lot about the lack of depth that this wide receiving core have, and I do believe majority of the problem was due to the unfortunate situation that went on with John Mechie. But when I think about John Mechie, I also go back to the original statement that was put out, because if you go back and you read the original statement that was released upon himself and the Houston Texans, it seemed like that there was hope that he could come back at some point during the season, more so during the second half of the year. And now that, of course, that's damn sure not going to happen. The loss of John Mechie, once again, it's an unfortunate situation. Glad to know that he's okay. But as a matter of fact, I want to say 2 weeks ago, we had an opportunity to see him in the locker room talking with all of his teammates and stuff. He's looking really, really good. But the loss of John Mechie, man, really hurt this wide receiving core, because that was a guy that was a guy, man. You go back and take a look at what he did last year in college, and I understand he was coming off, I believe it was the ACL tear. But even the short amount of time we had an opportunity to watch him, I believe it was doing rookie minicamp, he was looking explosive. He was looking good, on the sideline, and he was really working his way back up. And I just wanted to, shout out John Mechie, man, and hopefully everything continues to go well with him. And I cannot wait to see him. A couple
of games ago, he brought the nursing staff.
Was
that the Commanders game, or one of the recent games?
It was a Commanders game. And, I just wanted to say that, man, hopefully everything, continues to work out with him. And hopefully we can see John Mechie out there on the field next year.
Hopefully, man. He is a young receiver. My only issue is, if you were banking on a rookie wide receiver to come in and help your offense, then you knew from day one your offense is going to have issues. And when Brandon Cook's not replicating the success that he had last year, on a large part of the lack of success from your quarterback, this offense was doomed from day one. And it is what it is. And I don't see how anybody could justify waiting a year to – let me tell you something. Waiting a year to draft a quarterback that you believe may be there is insane. It's insanity. If you have the opportunity to draft a top quarterback this year, you do so. sick of it, man. I'm sick. I'm not the type to go off on people for what their beliefs are in terms of their team or religion. But y'all mixing the two right now, and your faith is blocking. Your faith is blocking your eyesight in reality. Waiting a full 365 days for Caleb Williams is insanity. It's absurd. It's ludicrous.
No, you the one that was talking about embrace the tank.
Embrace the tank for the current year. Caleb Williams doesn't come out in 2023.
Sometimes it works.
Caleb Williams comes
using
out in
your theory. Sometimes it works because there was a team in the NBA by the name of the Cleveland Cavaliers in 2002. They decided to embrace the tank another year because there was another prospect that was playing in Akron at the time. His name was LeBron. I think it worked out for them. So who knows? I'm using your theory. Yeah, embrace the tank. I'm using your theory.
They were already a terrible team. They
just also like them. They
also embraced the tank for the
what you want them to do.
Draft that was coming up,
which had some damn good players like Amari Stoudemire. Y'all mean
they didn't embrace the tank for 2 years. And by the way, if we're being honest, we all know what happened in the NBA. yeah, that payola was put down so the Cavs can get the hometown kid. Let's not do that. If you believe waiting a full another season to draft Caleb Williams because he reminds you of Patrick
using
Mahomes,
your theory,
you have.
And where is Patrick Mahomes? Issues. And this team waited an additional year to draft this kid who remind them of Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, whatever the case might be. I'm just using your theory, bro. Embrace the tank and it works. I'm just saying.
I'm out.